Council is now in session. The Honorable Judge Hatter presiding.
You may be seated. This is the trial of Lawrence John Wargrave on the charge of murder of Edward Seaton on the 10th day of June, 1930. Is the defendant present? Please stand. How do you plead? Thank you. Be seated. Bailiff, will you please bring in the jury? Who's representing the people?
Myself, Ms. Smith, and myself, Ms. Fields.
Are you ready to proceed?
Yes.
Who's representing the defendant?
I, myself, Mr. Davis, and my co-counsel, Brady East River.
Are you ready to proceed?
Yes.
Okay. We're going to begin this trial with opening statements. We'll let the prosecution make their opening statement.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to begin this by asking you a question. Answer this amongst yourselves. What world do we live in if even the Justice Department is becoming corrupt? If one man can take it upon himself illegally to sway a jury in his opinion, is it okay for me to rob a bank or kill someone? Let that question rest in your conscience while myself and Ms. Fields prove this man guilty.
Counsel for the defendant, would you like to make your opening statement?
Yes. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Tyler Davis, and this is my co-counsel, Brady East River, and we are lawyers representing Justice Wargrave. Mr. Wargrave is being accused of tampering with the jury that led to Edward Seaton's hanging, a defendant in one of Judge Wargrave's cases. There is no proof that Mr. Wargrave had any contact with his jury, no evidence that showed that he wanted to kill Edward Seaton, and we will show you that he is indeed not guilty.
Is the prosecution ready to bring their first witness?
We are, Your Honor.
Please proceed.
We would like to call to the stand Dr. Armstrong.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your name for the court.
Dr. Armstrong.
You may be seated.
Dr. Armstrong, how were you involved in the Edward Seaton case?
I was part of the jury.
What was the case about?
Edward Seaton was on trial for the murder of an elderly woman.
What verdict was the jury leaning towards?
Innocent.
How many jury members believed him to be innocent?
10, including me.
What changed the jury's mind to return with a verdict of guilty?
Justice Wargrave expressed his own personal feelings about the case. He was dead set against innocent and convinced many jurors to agree with him.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Counsel for the defendant, do you have any questions for the witness?
No.
Witness, you may step down. Counsel for the state, do you have any additional witnesses?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Counsel for the defendant, do you have any witnesses today?
Yes, Your Honor.
Proceed.
We have Jane Huntington, who was a member of Seaton's jury.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your name for the court.
Jane Huntington.
You may be seated.
What was your stance on the Seaton case?
Guilty.
What kind of contact did Judge Wargrave have with the jury? Did he ever speak to you guys, or did he leave you alone?
He just left us alone, no contact whatsoever.
What influence did Justice Wargrave have on the jury?
None.
That is all.
Counsel for the state, do you have any questions for the witness?
Yes, Your Honor, we do.
Proceed.
changed their minds?
Me and the other juror who thought Seaton was guilty.
And do you remember some of the things you may have said to the jurors that may have swayed their minds?
No.
No further questions.
You may sit down. Do you have any additional witnesses?
Yes.
Proceed.
Emma Philp.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Please state your name for the court.
Emma Philp.
You may be seated.
How many of Wargrave's cases have you reported for?
Several.
What kind of judge was Mr. Wargrave?
Fair and strict, who cared about justice.
What kind of influence did Judge Wargrave have on his jury? Did he ever speak to them?
He never spoke to them, but he was persuasive, but did not influence the jury's decision.
No more questions.
Does the counsel for the state have any additional questions?
We do, Your Honor.
Proceed.
So when you say persuasive, define that.
He had the ability to persuade them, but he never did.
And how can you be positive of this? Were you back in the deliberating room? Did you follow him after the cases?
I've asked him questions. I've interviewed him many times before, but he's never tried to persuade him while I was there.
No further questions.
You may be seated. Does counsel for the defendant have any additional witnesses?
No, Your Honor.
Does counsel for the state have any additional witnesses?
No, Your Honor.
All right, we're going to proceed with closing statements. We'll allow the prosecution to make the closing statement first.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, today we have clearly proven that Mr. Wargrave deliberately swayed the minds of 10 of the 12 jurors to guilty. Only 2 jury members believed the whole time that Edward Seaton was guilty. How is it that 10 jury members just all of a sudden changed their minds? Lawrence John Wargrave used his own personal opinions to sway the minds of the jury. Dr. Armstrong was on the jury of that case. He put forth evidence of how Mr. Wargrave swayed the minds of the jury. Edward Seaton died in jail because of Mr. Wargrave. What kind of society would we live in if a judge could get away with murder within the court? I trust that you, as members of the jury, will vote guilty without a doubt.
Thank you. I'll proceed with your closing statements, please.
The prosecution has not shown enough evidence to prove Mr. Wargrave guilty. The only thing Mr. Wargrave is guilty of is doing his job by bringing justice to the courtroom. Lawrence Wargrave used his judgment and instinct to comprehend Seaton's case. Evidence found after Seaton's death shows that he was in fact guilty. You must show Mr. Wargrave not guilty because there is not enough evidence to prove him guilty.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you have an important decision to make today. The defendant is here today on the charge of murder brought by the state in the murder of Edward Seaton on the 10th day of June 1930. The state has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt the defendant did indeed murder Mr. Seaton. Do you have any further questions? You may proceed to the jury room. Bailiff. Court is now in session. Will the foreman of the jury please stand? Madam, have you reached a verdict?
Yes.
Will the defendant please stand? You may read the verdict.
We the jury. We the jury find Mr. Wargrave not guilty.
Say you all.